Hello, sports fans. Today's date is July 12th, and you're tuned into another episode of 5 Things to Know with Richie. Today I'm going to be talking about Calvin Ridley, wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons, who is entering his third year this year, and 5 reasons that I think he can really break out this year and go over 1,000 yards. So let's jump right into it. The first thing I found was the fact that the Falcons last year were 13th in total points and 5th in yards in all of the NFL, and this was in Dirk Cutter's first season as the offensive coordinator for the Falcons. He had a stint earlier in Atlanta from 2012 to 2014 before he moved on to become the offensive coordinator and then the head coach in Tampa Bay for the last couple of years before returning to Atlanta, like I said, last year was his first year back in Atlanta, and in his first year, they had some decent success. Like I said, 13th in points and 5th in yards. I know one thing that he probably didn't want to do was lead all of football in total pass attempts. So the Falcons were first, like I said, in the entire league in the amount of times that they dropped back and threw the football, which did not help their rookie offensive lineman last year, Caleb McGarry. He was the 31st pick in the draft. He struggled at times last year. I'm sure teams knew that the Falcons were going to drop back and throw a lot, and that is advantageous for those defensive ends that can kind of just pin their ears back and just know that they have to beeline it for the quarterback, not worry about a little draw play or anything like that, possibly. But anyways, a reason for optimism for Falcons fans and Calvin Ridley enthusiasts would be the fact that the Falcons' 14th overall pick last year in the draft, because they had 2 first-round picks, was also on an offensive lineman, and that was on a guard, Chris Lindstrom, and he ended up breaking his foot the first game of the season and missed a lot of time. He ended up, I think, making it back for the last 3 or 4 games, but still missed a lot of time in his rookie year. And so they'll be looking to get him back healthy and hopefully run the ball a little bit more, get a little bit more balance in that line, and help out McGarry as well, not make him on such an island out there. So that's the first reason the Falcons, you should be optimistic about their opportunities in 2020. Another reason you should be enthusiastic, maybe not if you're a Falcons fan, but if you're a fantasy football fan, is the fact that the Falcons' defense was pretty bad last year. It was 23rd in points allowed and 20th in yards allowed. And in addition to that, they lost their best cornerback, Desmond Trufant. They cut him due to just salary constraints and felt like he wasn't performing up to the level of his contract, which is debatable to a certain extent. He was hurt last year, and he definitely didn't play as well as he had in years past. But in free agency and the draft, the way they addressed this issue was drafting the rookie cornerback out of Clemson, A.J. Terrell, who really struggled last year in the national championship game against Jamar Chase. And rookies at cornerback has often been one of the hardest positions to transition to the NFL. So the Falcons' pass defense could be pretty bad again, as they're looking at Isaiah Wilson and A.J. Terrell as their top 2 cornerbacks. I think there's some other guys on the depth chart too. Obviously, they don't just have 2 cornerbacks. But they're really lacking that number 1 true lockdown corner, which they're going to need playing in the NFC South. I mean, you got Michael Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, DJ Moore, and Curtis Samuel that you're going to have to play against 6 times a year. You need people to lock those guys down, and right now it doesn't seem like the Falcons have those guys. So that's the second point that's pointing towards Calvin Ridley having a Chris Godwin breakout type 2020. The third factor is the fact that Mohamed Sanu was traded last year in after week 7 to the Patriots. Austin Hooper left in free agency to go to the Browns. And I believe he set the new tight end. He's the highest paid tight end. So speaking of greener pastures, as I was with Adam Humphries, Austin Hooper also found himself some greener pastures as well. And then Devonta Freeman was just released, similar to Trufant in ways, salary cap reasons. He hasn't been performing as well as they'd hoped lately. And those 3 guys, Mohamed Sanu, Austin Hooper, and Devonta Freeman combined vacated 210 targets. And the Falcons brought in Hayden Hurst, Todd Gurley, and Laquan Treadwell to kind of mitigate the losses of those three players. But I'm sure Calvin Ridley will see some of those 210 targets like we were talking about yesterday with Chris Godwin and Adam Humphries and Deshaun Jackson leaving him 180 targets. He only ended up seeing a 26 target boost, which was about 15% when I did the math. So, I mean, if Calvin Ridley gets 10% of 210 targets, that's easy math. That's 21 targets. So 15% would be like 32 extra targets. Calvin Ridley would definitely go over 1,000 yards if he has about 125 targets. It would be very, very surprising if he didn't go over 1,000 yards with over 125 targets. So that brings me to my fourth point, which is the fact that similar to Chris Godwin, Calvin Ridley is already a talented player. He put up about 850 yards and 7 touchdowns last year on the 93 targets he had. And in addition to that, Ridley posted a catch rate of just below 68%, averaging about 9 yards per target on those 93 targets that I said he got. So those are good numbers. I mean, that yards per target number was better than Julio Jones had last year. So he's getting valuable downfield looks. He's not just getting a bunch of short underneath stuff and screens and things of that nature. So that brings us to our fifth and final point, which is that I want to talk about. Calvin Ridley has always been good at football. When he was a freshman in the SEC, he led that conference, which is known as one of the best football conferences in all of the country, in receptions with 89 and had over 1,000 yards. So, I mean, the dude's always been good at football, and it just seems like it's a matter of time before he goes over 1,000 yards. One thing I will mention, however, that I found interesting was the fact that he was pretty old when he was a freshman in college. And right now, he's only 1 month younger than Tyler Boyd, who has played 2 full seasons more than Calvin Ridley. So that's not trying to say Calvin Ridley's not good or anything. It's just that he is a little bit older than some of the players we think of when they dominate as a true freshman, guys like Jalen Reagor and some other guys that also posted good numbers as true freshmen. 18-year-olds Juju, I think, comes to mind as someone who just dominated from a young age. But that's my video for today. Those are the 5 reasons I think Calvin Ridley is really poised to have a breakout 2020. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like I said yesterday, leave any feedback in the comments, and I hope to hear from you guys as much as possible. Thanks.